The TRC began its work in 2005, documenting abuses and identifying the perpetrators and their victims. The TRC has the power to grant amnesty to perpetrators, but it can also recommend prosecution. In 2009, it will make recommendations to the government on how to mete out justice in order to heal the country.
Why do you believe that the TRC can make a difference?
The TRC of its own may not make any difference in our society, but our country has a history of conflicts, a history of bloodletting. We need to ask ourselves the hard questions. What went wrong? And so one thing we're doing at the TRC is trying to break the culture of silence in this country about crimes.
The war in Liberia lasted over 14 years. It ended when the United Nations stepped in to demobilise the thousands of fighters. Democratic elections were finally held in 2005. After being demobilised, most of the fighters were sent off to civilian life with nowhere to go and nothing to do.
After the war, most of the people who commit crime are ex-combatants. I felt rejected from the people who gave me arm. After this armament, the money they gave me, I make no use out of the money. I use the money to smoke drug. After smoking and the money blew off, I have no hope, nowhere to get money from. So the only way I could get the money to smoke the drug, accepting I commit crime.
Liberia's president told me that providing a future for ex-combatants is one of Liberia's most urgent priorities.
Finding the jobs for our thousands and thousands of young people who were either victims of the war or ex-combatants, and giving them skills to enable them to become viable citizens. That's our biggest challenge because they're unemployed, and that means that they're very vulnerable to being recruited for other things.
The worst that will happen is that somebody could use these guys, just an announcement to them, say, look, you guys are suffering and blah, 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 this is let's go to fight. They all will go in 1,000.
While the state is still deciding what to do with the thousands of disbanded fighters and whether to punish them or not, some perpetrators have already been forgiven by their victims, who even include family and friends. Joshua Milton Bly is taking Nana home to be reconciled with his uncle, who he once tried to kill.
Kneel down before your uncle. And that is a sign of forgiveness as the uncle put his back on him. So Nana is now forgiven.
I don't think nobody should be held responsible for the war. Nobody. If there should be somebody to be held responsible, we hold the devil. The devil is to be held responsible.
Our country has a history of impunity where people didn't at all feel accountable for their actions. And what the TRC is attempting to do is what Liberians have not done before: account for the past, document the past. And the fundamental mandate of the TRC is to uproot the root causes of the conflict.
Do you think that the innocent victims in Liberia can or should forgive you? Because you have been partly responsible for these guys. Some of them was your fault.
Exactly so. I'm asking them to forgive me, but I'm not forcing them. It is not compulsory. I'm wanting it to happen by themselves. And that is why I'm trying to do a lot of good to appeal for their forgiveness.
The Liberian government knows that by punishing ex-warlords, they could rekindle the fighting and destabilise the country. But letting them off could undermine the rule of law. It's a tough balance to strike. The government has committed itself to implementing all the TRC recommendations, and there's still the possibility of a war crimes tribunal.
I briefly want to talk to these little ones.
Amen.
Joshua Milton Bly has already voluntarily given his testimony to the TRC. He's one of many former commanders they will need to hear from if there really is to be truth and reconciliation in Liberia. Former general, but naked, can see the argument for punishment.
Definitely, I deserve punishment.
What kind of punishment?
Whatever, if it is, if the punishment deserved according to law and for the future history of this country is death, fine. If it is to be hanged, fine. If it is to be life imprisonment, fine. If it is some time in prison, fine. If they can pardon me, fine also.
So can and should Joshua Milton Bly and those like him be forgiven? Once pardoned, they could help rebuild the country. And Christian forgiveness would triumph over revenge. And yet forgiving them could be a signal that the law doesn't matter, even for the most terrible crimes.